All episodes of the Real Women in Business podcast reflect the opinions and views of the guest and cast McCrory and do not reflect official policy or position of employers or clients. Thank you.
You're listening to the Real Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Cass McCrory, and in this podcast, we highlight women in all kinds of businesses. For yourself, someone else, full-time, part-time, overtime hustle, together we will learn from and with one another. And if we get it right, it'll lift us all. Let's get into it.
Friends, today we're talking to Lauren Sweeney, co-founder and CEO of poptop. This is an amazing conversation. Lauren is a founder, an entrepreneur. She has got a varied work experience. She's a single mom. She lives in Brooklyn. We get into so much goodness about being a female founder, taking care of ourselves, really looking at what's even more important than balance. And Lauren gives us so many gems. You're going to love this one. Grab your notebook. You're going to want it. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cass. It's exciting to be here today.
So we have a kind of interesting story. I worked with your father a bit ago through another client of mine, and out of, an ask for a guest for this podcast, your dad was like, you know what? I think you should know my daughter, Lauren. And he connected us, and I had no idea kind of what the landscape of what you were doing was, but I was so glad that he made that introduction. What a great dad.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that my dad has always been my biggest champion. Like even when I was in school, I remember I was struggling in math a bit, 7th or 8th grade, and I remember him telling my teacher, "You don't get it. She's brilliant." I was like, "Okay, Dad, like maybe slow down a little bit because I haven't been doing my homework." but he's just been like in my corner for my whole life.
What a brilliant way to show up.
Like, yeah. And if I can be like that same influence on my daughter, just letting her know I'm always there, always going to advocate for her, and we'll pass it on.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love for you to share with everybody a little bit about what you get to do in this world these days.
Yes. So I just started my own company for the first time. After knowing so many female founders, actually interviewing a few, I took the leap myself and started poptop, which is an agency connecting comedians with brands. I'd noticed in my work in the startup world that funny content was driving like real business results for us, not just engagement on social, which is great at the top of the funnel, but we were seeing money come in because of funny content. And at the same time, through my co-founder, comedian Pat Regan, I knew all of these comedians who were down to work with. They just did Pathway to make it happen. So that's what we're doing.
That's really awesome.
So I think I'm excited. It's been really scary putting it out there for the first time in the last month after working on our website all summer, kind of operating in stealth mode. So every time I hear someone give positive feedback, it does so much for me at this stage, because this stage is filled with so much anxiety and so much fear. But every week it gets a little bit less scary.
Yeah. What about it is scary to you? Because I think I love the idea of pulling the curtain back on this, because I think so often we just see the excitement, but there is like an underlying current of like, is this going to work?
Yeah, I think what's really scary about entrepreneurship is the vulnerability that comes with it. Because everything I've ever done before, and I'd run some initiatives within different companies I worked with, but they were always under someone else's umbrella. And when I say, like, I have this idea and now I'm trying to sell it to the world, it's like, it's really terrifying to be like, what if this thing that I've just been cooking up in my head is like not that great, and I put it out there and it's a huge embarrassment? Like, what if what if we don't sign any clients? Like, what if no money comes in? Yeah, it's scary to put yourself out there in such a real way. But I've also noticed that with each step along the way, I've encountered a bit of resistance, and it's usually just when I'm about to really do my best work or like put something out there. Like, I was writing a big proposal over the weekend, and it was then that there's this like part of me that wants to close my computer, get up, like go get a drink of water, go for a run, whatever, like right when that big idea is about to come and right when it's about to get good. And for me, the way to actively be vulnerable in this like early entrepreneurship stage is to keep my computer open and to write down those ideas, to send those emails. And it's so scary, but it's starting to pay off in real ways, like clients coming in, etc.
That's exciting. I want to learn more about kind of how you evaluated the merits of the idea, because I know you invested some real time in that.
Yeah. So what I kind of did first was I was just at my in my last role, and I'd seen this before with other startups that I worked with. Prior to starting poptop Land, I was content director at Hey Mama, a community and platform for working moms. And before that, I was at Jet Black, and saw comedy driving results there. But while I was at Hey Mama, I was able to actually see membership applications go up with funny content. And I started to track those numbers a bit. But then I started to do a bit more research focused on comedians. So I started creating a database of comedians just from my network and my co-founders network who we'd be potentially working with. And what I found, so I went through their Instagrams and calculated their engagement rates just to see if my hunch was right. And if you're running an influencer campaign, an engagement rate is one of the top metrics you look at. It's the average number of engagements on their most recent 12 posts. So for a typical influencer, having an engagement rate around 6% is fantastic. There are influencers who are making good amounts of money with even a lower engagement rate than that. What I was finding with these comedians was that their engagement rates tended to be between 8% and 12%, which I couldn't find. There are hardly any typical influencers. Like I mean, like when I say typical influencers, I mean like the people who are like getting the most dollars from brands right now. Like those typical influencers don't have that engagement rate, which is fine. I think they're also serving a great purpose. But I felt like these comedians could be leveraged in a really unique way to tell brand stories in ways that are authentic and driving more results. So I started to run those numbers and felt like it was worth taking the leap. And here we are.
Yeah. And it's not been very long.
It's been just, I guess, 3 weeks since my co-founder and I sat on my sofa here in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and we'd been working on the site. We got it to a good place. And one Monday we were like, this is it. We're going to post it on our Instagram stories today, his stories and my stories. And on that day, we had 1,200 plus unique site visitors just from posting on each of our Instagram stories. No Instagram grid posts, nothing on LinkedIn. So it was cool to see that traction. And then since then, I've been getting emails from comedians that sometimes make me cry because I'm doing this so that they get paid well to do what they're good at. because they're all creating funny content already. And a lot of them are, say, like doing work that's not aligned with their skill set in order to be able to stay in New York or LA, performing at night, doing what they need to do to make it to the next level in the comedy world. So if we can create a pathway for them to leverage their talents earlier on in their careers, and I mean, they make money, brands make money, we make money. It's just a win for everyone.
And people are entertained.
Yeah, people are entertained. And I think I'm a fairly spiritual person, and I think the value of humor can go deeper than that sometimes. I think it can be really realigning. Like if we're having a bad day, the best thing we can do is laugh. And if we can give people like different little reasons to laugh throughout the day, it's not gonna hurt. People are just maybe gonna smile a bit more. Maybe it's just the boost that we need.
Yeah. All right. So I want to highlight a couple of things. You had an idea and you tested it. You know, you pulled some metrics. You looked at the validity of the concept. You saw a real need, and then you went for it.
Yeah, we're going for it.
Yeah, like that's really impressive, Lauren, because I think so many times people wait for somebody else to give them permission to do something. And you're not doing that, which is great.
I think that's the value of just having been introduced to so many amazing founders, especially female founders. Just that's where my journey has taken me. Yeah. And I've seen in the startup world, like really like powerful business women. And from the outside, if I didn't know them personally, I think that they had raised all these investor dollars and like done all of these other things before like going out and getting it perfectly the first time. And what I've seen in real life is that everyone who's doing stuff is just taking their idea and like testing it as soon as possible, like taking the concept and testing it right away. And then not building too much before you've tested the concept. So all we've done so far is put up a website. I really, right now I'm learning how brands are interacting with us, what they really want from us, before investing, say, in like building a platform or something like that.
Yeah. If you were to say, here's like 2 or 3 female founders that have really inspired you so that other people can follow. I mean, obviously, I want people to be following you because I think that this is just an amazing idea. And I think we're going to be calling you one of those female founders to watch in this space. Oh. Like, I believe that. Who should we follow if we want to be inspired in the same way? Because we are the company we keep, and that includes on social media.
Yeah, so I can say my most recent 2 bosses, Katja Libben and Amory Kibler from Hey Mama. What they've done is, I mean, they taught me so much, and I appreciate both of them so much. But they've really done what I just described. Like they had a cool idea. They've taken what they've learned and like built based on what their customer is telling them along the way. And their customer is like a working mom who needs support. They're not just like selling something. They're like providing real value in people's lives. Someone else who's really inspired me is Jenny Fleiss. She's the co-founder of Rent the Runway, where she's still on the board, and she is the CEO at Jet Black, where I consulted for about a year before joining Hey Mama. Yeah, and Jenny is the kind of person who like rolls up her sleeves and gets it done. She's so incredibly powerful, and she's accomplished so much, but she's humble and she's kind, and she's willing to share what she's learned with others. And she's really actively been supportive of female founders. And then someone else who inspired me, who I'd worked with, Tanya Van Court, the founder and CEO of Goalsetter. she had the same experience. Well, not obviously everyone's experience is different, but she had also been a single mom. I'm a single mom. So I have to admit, I'm especially inspired by other single moms. And she had this background working at Nickelodeon. She had like a really successful career. She could have stayed on that path, but she had an idea to educate the next generation on financial literacy. And she also went for it. And like went for it as the mother of a young child. Well, a few kids, but one was like a baby when she started Goal Setter. So I think layering in that element of motherhood and saying like, we as mothers can choose to create the lives we want for ourselves. And that can include founding a company when you have a baby around the same time. And she's been on Shark Tank and probably made a few people cry because she's amazing. But yeah, so those are a few people who have inspired me along the way.
Thank you for sharing them. We'll follow along and I'll include links to their social on the show notes here. You mentioned being a single mom.
Yes.
Tell me about how that kind of works into both making the decision to start this company and creating the life you want.
So I don't think I would have done much in my career if I hadn't been a single mom. When I split up with my daughter's father, she was about 6 months old. I'd been working in publishing, was happy, I liked it, not making like a ton of money. I had, a partner also making money at the time when she was born. So I didn't feel that same pressure to provide. And then all of a sudden I was a single mom and I knew I was never going to get child support from my ex. So rather than putting all of my energy into chasing down money that I was not going to see, and relying on someone else to support me and my daughter, I decided that I would make more money. And that's happened. I like never would have guessed how it would have happened back when I just put my trust in the fact that it would. But that's like kind of the catalyst that has set off my career in the startup world and now beginning my own thing. And then making the decision to start a company as a single mom. I'm lucky. I know a ton of single mom founders locally in Brooklyn and around the city. And having the degree of flexibility, it's like I might work a bit more, as a founder, but I also have the ability to take a break from say like 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. and take my daughter to gymnastics and make her dinner and put her to bed myself. And I like having that flexibility, and I like that being my own boss is what gives me that flexibility. And I like having just that personal sense of accountability to my clients, and knowing that I will get things done on the right timelines, but also make being a mother a priority. So yeah, in a really crazy way, it feels like as a single mom, taking the leap to work for myself is the most sustainable solution. So
I relate to that. When I started my company, I also was a single mom. I didn't. Yeah, that's true. I was, I had been married and we had Lexi, who's now 11, and she was perfect and wonderful. And that marriage was not going to work. And I knew that I needed to set myself up with both a career and a life that could support the both of us completely. Not because we couldn't or wouldn't get anything, but because I didn't want anything. That was my big thing. It's like, I don't want anything from my ex-husband. And I still don't. And we have a pretty good relationship now, which has been a lot of work. but I didn't want anything. And so I knew that I needed to create work and a life that would support us in a way that I felt really proud of. And the only way I knew I could do that was if I were in control of it. And I wasn't counting on somebody else to see me as worthy of a promotion.
It's so empowering it's like that fear we were talking about before kind of comes up for me here, but it's so empowering to say my financial future is in my own hands. It's all up to me.
That's a gift. I mean, I think that's the one thing, some people have a lot of fear about entrepreneurship because historically a corporate job was so stable. Like a generation or two before us, it's like, yeah, you started working at a company and you worked there your entire life, 40-year retirement parties, that was the norm. And now a company could just say, hey, we're not going to need your role anymore and walk you out of the building that same day.
Especially in like the tech sector, it's like, a company pivots and the needs change and you're gone.
And so having a portfolio of clients that are supporting you and you're constantly in a position to get to curate the kind of work you want to do.
Yes. And to kind of bring together different elements of my experience to serve different people in different ways. That's kind of like the uniquely joyful thing about doing what we're doing here.
The other thing that I personally have found to be just the most rewarding is the fact that I'm not holding myself accountable to somebody else's definition of what a work day looks like. And, being a single mom, I think that was a really huge gift because I did, and I still do, from 3 until 7:30. I'm with my kids because I don't get those years back.
That's exactly what's been easy about, this school year just started, so I don't want to speak too soon, but I've found that when I'm able to be present to my daughter for a bit in the late afternoon, she feels like she got that time with me. And then I'm able to put her to bed more easily, and we're able to go to bed at a reasonable time, which for her is like now like 7:30 or 8 o'clock because she's 4. Where I'd found that challenging in the last school year.
Yeah. I think that I had read somewhere, and I'll have to look for the attribution to this, but kids require like 15 engagements with their parents a day to feel the love. Mm-hmm. And I think that like those engagements, like one engagement is a story with a hug afterwards. When you're working a 9 to 5 with an hour commute on each side of that leaves you really, really limited time and a whole lot to do in that time between meals and bed and the pressure of everything else that needs to happen in a household.
Coupled with the fact that, you're going to be getting Slack messages and emails and everything during that time too still, which still happens. I'm still getting emails like, 24 hours a day, maybe 20 hours a day, like everyone else. But I feel more in control of the fact that I can say, okay, at 8 o'clock, I'm going to respond to this client email. Now, where it used to feel a little bit like I needed to act as if everything was on fire all the time.
Yeah. The deep breath of being able to set your own priority. That's a really good feeling.
Absolutely. But by the same token, it's like, I do like to, within conversations around, like, especially I led content processes at Hey Mama. So we published a lot of like social and editorial content about working motherhood. I like to be cognizant of the fact that not everyone wants to start their own company. Not everybody wants to go on this journey, but for like corporate working moms, for moms who are freelancing, like how does everyone feel that sense of like control of their time? And I think it's like a cultural dialogue that we all need to, I think we need to be so conscious as working moms of like the way we're describing our real work-life balance situation to other people. being real about what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
In conversations with each other, but then also in conversations with men or with women who choose not to have children or don't have children yet.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'll say I have a lot of control, and sometimes I choose to control it really poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's just real life, right? Like, there's been this week that we're recording this, I have had really terrible boundaries with my work. And I can see that, and I can choose to make changes. But I think it's important to say, hey, yeah, we're not going to always get it right. Like, just because you have control of it doesn't mean that you're going to know what to do with that power.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I think that there's like an ideal that we can aspire to, but then when we fall short, we just have to forgive ourselves and be like, oh my gosh, I checked that email in front of my kid at like 7 p.m. when it's like our prime time. I am trying not to do that, but I'm moving on.
And also to say to like the women that are working in traditional 9-to-5 jobs, or 8-to-6 jobs, or however it is that they're being defined, that just starting the conversation within your organization about what's working and what's not about this is important.
And it honestly, so I've had an aunt who did that. She's now a VP at like a major retailer. I don't want to like invade her privacy by sharing her story and like giving too much details, but when she had her third daughter, who's now in like third grade, she said to her boss, listen, like I'm going to need some flexibility here. She started working from home one day a week until her daughter was in kindergarten. And then, was still promoted to VP like within that. So I think it's like asking for flexibility and believing and knowing that needing flexibility doesn't mean you're less worth a promotion or et cetera. Like everybody does their best work when they have some boundaries between work and life.
Yes. And a lot of the times, people, especially in organizations, retaining talent is an expensive thing to do, right? And so organizations will do far more than we think that they will to retain great talent.
Yeah. Oh, the corporate world does feel so far away from me right now.
Yeah, I bet. But that's, I think that's, it's always good to keep that in mind, because I think as you bring on clients, that's where they're at. And remembering, most of our corporate clients, you've got that pressure on you. I'm going to hold a little space for you to see it a little bit differently, because by doing that, we're all elevated.
Exactly.
So I want to go back a little bit. We got a glimpse of Lauren in 7th grade, not doing her math homework, but still getting the undivided support of her dad, which is awesome. I'm curious, like, what did you go to school for? You mentioned publishing.
Yeah. So I actually, I went into Fordham. I went to school at Fordham College, Rose Hill, up in the Bronx. I went in planning on being a communications major, and told my parents I was a communications major all through college. But what ended up happening was I was a communications major. Freshman year, I went on a service trip to New Orleans, and there was like this group leader who was like a just graduated senior. It was in the summer. And he asked me, he was like, what did you like enjoy working on like during this like past year, like your freshman year of college? And what I really enjoyed working on was a paper on the economic impact of women's work in Bolivian mining communities. And it was, I think, the only paper I got an A on, like in my freshman year of college. And I ended up becoming a women's studies major as a result of that conversation, where he made me look at what I actually enjoyed. He said, oh, I like writing about women's work and the impact that it can have on economies. So I was a women's major in a pretty conservative school, which was the source of a lot of interesting dichotomies, and also focused on like a lot of econ classes, which kind of wasn't, I felt like back then, this was like 2010 to 2012, I feel like there was less conversation around women and money in conversations around feminism. So I felt like kind of a black sheep even within the women's studies community. So after college, I worked in like a few different, like I worked in fashion for a bit. I saw the way women's work was impacting the fact that I don't know. It was like one of interest to me, and two, I saw that fashion was where women were powerful, and I liked that. But then I also like there was some, for lack of a better word, bitchiness that I was like, I'm not with this. Didn't really know what to do. Ended up working in publishing, in advertising sales when my daughter was born. And I was working with a small publisher up in Connecticut. I moved up there a couple of years after college, and I liked it. I started volunteering with an indie press that published like underrepresented communities as well. So that was cool. I was like doing this publishing work, telling stories that weren't being told. And then I had my daughter. I started realizing that the money I was making wasn't enough to sustain us, especially once I started doing it on my own. So I found a job working as director of M2 Moms, the Marketing to Moms conference. And it was there that I started. So my role there was like selling sponsorships, but then also planning the content for these events. And like every step of my career, I've been like, why did anyone let me do this? But there I was. So I started working with like clients like Google and Baby Center and Twitter, and getting like a real grasp on research in the parenting space. And then I started a mommy blog. Tech companies in the parenting space started like hiring me as a consultant. And I worked for myself for like about like a year and a half after like I left that job, because I was like, I was kind of like overselling sponsorships, and I realized I could make more money and have more flexibility doing like interesting work, basically turning my knowledge as a parent into like marketing and even some like product for parenting startups. So I did that. Jet Black was my biggest client for a good portion of that time. And then I ended up at Hey Mama, where I led content. So all social, all editorial, and all email. And along, like, I would say the last 2.5, 3 years are what really showed me that measurable success that comedy has on brand results. And I think it was only in early stage startups that I was like so able to see it, because when you're on small teams and the company is young, it's not like everyone's in a silo. It's like you're working on social, but you can also see results like coming through your email. Like you can see sales being made, you can see subscriptions coming through. Mm-hmm. So I've been uniquely lucky that I've just been on this journey where each step of the way has made itself really clear to me, and I've just said yes.
That is such a resounding thing that I've heard from so many guests, is that they've said yes. Even if they didn't know that they could do it, they figured they would be able to figure it out. And like Marie Forleo's new book just came out, Everything is Figure Outable. Like, that's it. Like, if you can embrace that, like the faith that you can have in yourself, you can do things that you never would have thought possible.
That's exactly it. And I think that even, I mean, I have a very minimal understanding of tech, but like having worked like alongside engineers a couple of times, I'm like, oh, like everything that we can like conceive of doing, there's a pathway to do it. Like there's like building blocks that we can use to like create campaigns and measure results and like demonstrate real success that we're able to drive sales through certain types of marketing efforts. So that gives me the faith in what I'm doing.
Yeah. There's something, I love what you said about why did anyone let me do this? Because I can so relate to that feeling. I can look back at my career and be like, why on earth would they have said, yeah, let's let this chick do this? She knows nothing. Like, that's how it felt at the time. And then, yeah, it was a success. There was a win.
Yeah. Every single thing, it's felt that way. I feel that way even now. I'm like, why is anyone letting me do this? I'm like, oh, right. No one's letting me do this. I just decided to like go on Squarespace and.
Right. Yeah. I felt like that with the podcast too, honestly. It was one of those things where I really wanted to have these conversations. I got stuck for about 15 minutes experiencing a YouTube video that my 11-year-old was consuming with what I can only qualify as a YouTube mom. And I don't remember her name. And I'm sure she's a really lovely human being. So please don't send me nasty emails about me. But this was not a real woman. This was a woman who was not doing the work of life. She had made it to a place in her YouTube fame that allowed them to have a full-time camera crew following their family around as they went on various vacations. This is not a woman that I want my daughter to aspire to be when she grows up.
Yeah, it's really wild that, I don't know, that all of that's happening now. Like, yeah. There's a lot of surface stuff being really celebrated.
Which
at the same time, I think
to it.
Yeah, I think at the same time, we're like able to have the kinds of conversations that we want to have, and like, yeah, and like start our own podcast, start Instagram accounts, start businesses that like allow us to be like, okay, I don't think I want my daughter to be seeing that, so what can I create?
Yes. Like that was one of the primary drivers. And just a few weeks ago now, she said, I really love who you're introducing me to, Mom, on the podcast, because she listens to every episode. And I am so grateful for that, because I mean, even if nobody else were to listen to it, which I'm really blessed that there are so many people that do listen to it, I'm grateful. Share the podcast, please. But like, even if it were just for that one 11-year-old that I happen to have given my entire heart to, that would be enough. Because she's inspired by all of these different women that are doing it their own way. And it's showing her room to do it her own way too.
Mm-hmm.
It's powerful.
Really is.
So I want to talk a little bit about this. Everybody's got a different reaction to it. Some feel it like a gut punch. This idea of balance. So you've got a daughter, you have a new business. How are you balancing in some things that are for you in that equation? Or is that just not part of the equation in these days?
It's a huge part of the equation for me. The only way I'm able to do it is we're fairly regimented about our schedules during the week at least. So in the morning, I take time for myself, and in the evening, right before bed. I've also tightened up what taking time for myself looks like. I stopped watching TV like somewhere in the last few months, and I've realized I really don't miss it. So yeah, I take time for myself, but it's pretty regimented, and usually yeah, we can get into like what my routines are kind of. In the morning, I do a Course in Miracles, and then I do an affirmation exercise that my spiritual teacher taught me. And then I play the singing bowl. And I do that a few times throughout the day too, just to quiet my mind and make space to receive whatever's coming to me, because it's usually better than whatever I can sit there like freaking out about. It always is. I could never have conceived of all the good things in my life Like I just had to like be quiet and let them come. And then at night, I always read a book. I have a lot of anxiety. I think that's so like, I feel like everybody does now. And I need to put my phone down, plug it in, say goodnight to my phone, and read a book for a solid, like at least 45 minutes before bed. But then in terms of balance during like the time in between that like morning ritual and like evening ritual, I really believe in presence over balance. So it's like whatever I'm doing, I try to just be there and be in that lane. So if I'm working, I'm working. If I'm like with my daughter, I'm with her. And then if I'm having like social time with like my friends or on a date, I try to also just be there in that space. It's not always perfect. Like I'll, you know, not accidentally, whatever. I'll start thinking about like work stuff on a date or think about whatever things cross over. But I try to aspire to presence over balance. And some days are totally work days. Like sometimes it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but I'll have days where I am not home in the evening and I have to be at events to support my career. And that's that. There are some days that I'm just with my daughter the whole day and I'm like, I'm leaving my phone at home and we're going to the park, or I'm going to follow her around the Met and just see where the day takes us. And then there are days that I'm like doing my own thing as like a 29-year-old woman in Brooklyn with like friends and a dating life. So it's like being present to whichever bucket I'm in.
I love that. Presence over balance. I'm going to share that one today, Lauren, and we're going to tease this episode out because we don't get to share this for a little bit here, but somebody needs to hear this idea of presence over balance right now. So we're going to do that today.
That's so exciting.
Because that is brilliant. And it does give us permission to not try to make it all work.
Yeah, like you're not going to close the deal while you're with your like kid. So just be with your kid.
Yeah. And you know, when I always feel like when I don't give myself my presence when it's my time, I feel like bitter and a martyr when I'm working on the work. And nothing good comes out of that.
Yeah. When I don't do A Course in Miracles in the morning, watch out. Fully different person.
When you do it, so I have A Course in Miracles. I've opened it up, I'm going to be real honest, probably 6 times, and I find it really overwhelming. I've had this book, I have moved this book, Lauren, 6 times. From house
it's hard
to
get
house.
through.
Yeah. How do you do it? How are you approaching it?
So I do the workbook. I've gone through the workbook one time. I'm going through it the second time. The first time I went through it, it took me like 2 years, probably a bit more than 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
I bought it well before my daughter was conceived and I finished it when she was a baby. So it took a while.
All right, good. So I feel better about that.
So the whole thing that A Course in Miracles teaches is forgiveness. And it's also the thing that can be the most challenging about actually doing it, because the entire time it's like giving you these really specific instructions on like, for the first 5 minutes of every hour, consider this idea. And inevitably you're going to forget. And then you have to forgive yourself for forgetting, which is like the whole point of the thing, which is maybe why they did it that way. I don't know, but it's complex and it's heavy. And it's like, you just have to, what works for me is making the commitment to opening it up every day, doing one of the exercises to the best of my ability that day. There's another book I love called The 4 Agreements, that one of the agreements is always do your best. And sometimes your best is like a little bit half baked. And sometimes your best is like total like understanding and presence and all of that. So I just open the book first thing in the morning, like turn on the light, read my exercise for the day. Give it the attention I can. And like, sometimes it's with me the whole day and sometimes it slips out of my mind, but that's why I'm doing it again. And I'll probably, after I finish like this round of workbook exercises, I'll like give myself a break for a little while, but then I'll probably go through it again. Because I think the first time I did it, I thought you go through all the exercises one time, you go through the workbook one time, and your life changes and you're done. But I think it's a repeatable process.
I think everything is. I have found for so many things, it's in the repetition that I really learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like I reread
different things.
Dale Carnegie's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just saying you get different things out of it every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every September, I reread Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Because
I've actually never read that one.
Oh, it's a classic for a reason. It's really great. It will not take you long to get through. But it really just puts the focus on, it's really not about you. It's about them. And the more you can keep it about them, the greater you'll resonate.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's easy, and I read it every year because I frequently need to remind myself that, while my problems and my whatever seem really big, everybody else has their own thing. And if I can keep the focus on other people, then I'm going to be of highest service in whatever work I do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have got just 10 minutes left in this call, and we have to get through this lightning round. But before we do, I want to make sure, did we not talk about something today that you really wanted to share?
I think we covered so much, and I feel like, this has been great.
All right, cool. I do too. I'm so excited to share this with women. You're an inspiration, Lauren. Thanks for sharing so much and so candidly. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on, and also for sharing that with me. Because it's nice to hear when you're just like doing your own thing, that it's somehow inspiring to other people.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of the harder parts about entrepreneurship is that there's no, for women in particular, because women are largely words of affirmation. Like they like words to tell them that they've done a good thing. And in entrepreneurship, where you have a client relationship, your good work is almost an expectation. And so you don't get a lot of attaboys. You don't get a lot of sometimes you do, and that's a really great feeling. But on the day-to-day basis, there isn't somebody being like, oh yeah, look I see you doing your thing. Well done, lady. There just isn't a lot of that. So
true.
Carving it out and also giving it to yourself, I have found that to be a really important practice for me. Is just saying, hey, here's where you did really well today, Cass. Just acknowledging my own best work.
Yeah. Being able to appreciate ourselves.
Oh, big work there.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your go-to jam when you need to up your energy?
Okay. This is something everybody needs to hear. There's a song called Dope Girl Magic by Tank and the Bangas. It came on my Spotify somehow, and it's been my jam the past couple of months.
I love it. I will put it on my list.
Leveling. It's like I feel ridiculous sometimes. It's so good.
What time do you wake up?
So I need 7 or 8 hours of sleep, and I like to read. Takes me pretty late, so I wake up at 7. I feel like I should wake up earlier. Sometimes I do, but 7 is nice for me.
Nice. What does breakfast look like?
Do lemon water when I'm making my daughter's lunch, a green juice somewhere in the neighborhood, usually placed by her school, and then coffee and some kind of protein.
What is a favorite ritual?
So I was talking before, reading before bed, is sometimes that's what I look forward to at the end of the day. Whatever I'm going through, I'm like, okay, in 5 hours, I'm going to be laying in my bed reading that book that I've been super into, and reading to my daughter before she goes to bed. And then that morning ritual that gets every day off to a good start is another favorite of mine. So, of course, in Miracles, doing an affirmation exercise, and then making my mind shut up for a minute with either the singing bowl or just plain old meditation.
Nice. Morning person or night owl?
I'm a night owl, but as a mom and a working mom, I like trained myself to be a morning person.
Yeah. I think we've all been there where it's like, okay, now I need to adjust myself at least for the next 18 years.
And then it will just become habit.
Yes. What is the book you recommend the most?
So there's a book called Luminous Life, written by like an eye doctor. He gets into like matter and perception, and then really talks about presence. Like a lot of my concepts on presence came from this book, Luminous Life by Dr. Jacob Israel Lieberman.
Yeah.
I also love The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I've been fortunate enough to learn from him and his sons on retreats. It's been amazing. And The Kickass Single Mom by Emma Johnson, a friend of mine. I recommend that to every newly single mom.
Nice. Kick-ass single mom. What children's book are you reading a lot these days?
Dragons Love Tacos.
Oh.
Dragons Love Tacos 2 as well.
Yes, we talk about dragons and diapers and tacos a lot in my house. Do you have The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors?
I don't.
Put it on your list. And also Rosie Revere, Engineer.
I'm making a note literally right now because
those
I know
two are just fantastic. And if you don't do the voices with Rock, Paper, Scissors, there's like something humanly wrong with you. It is so funny. It is such a well-written book that you have to do the voices with it.
And if I do them the first time, I'm going to be locked into doing them forever. So I'll do them the first time and my daughter will never let me not do them again.
There are days where my husband and I will trade off reading the book. So I'll play different roles and he'll play different roles. And it's so much fun. It will take me from kind of having like okay, as soon as the story is read, I have to get back into my work self to, I'm a fun person. I really like talking like the apricot in this book.
The laughter that happens during like bedtime reading with a 4-year-old, there is maybe nothing better. Like she thinks everything is so funny.
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old. I have a 4-year-old too. It is potent magic. 4-year-old delight is magic.
The giggles and like it's in her eyes. It's amazing.
What can someone do to help you feel appreciated?
This is an interesting one. I think helping out helps me feel like seen as a really busy working single mom when one of my siblings or my parents or my friends like gives me a hand with something. That really helps.
Yeah.
And then also just like when anyone like my co-founder, my cousin, something like big happened for me over the summer, just like in my own healing process. And I went to LA to be with this group of women who were all committed to making economic, I'm trying to figure out how to put this, making money part of conversations around domestic violence. And I found out I was going on this trip to LA. You might have to cut some of this out because I'm being so jumbled here. But I found out that I could go to this conference in LA. My co-founder, my cousin, was like, he was like, you've been so resilient, and this is an opportunity for you to appreciate how resilient you've been. And I just like broke up in tears when he said that, because when someone sees how resilient, I like kind of sometimes get resentful of the whole like strong single mom thing. I'm like, yeah, I've been strong because I've had to be. But when someone really sees that resilience has been part of my story, it does get me. And it does make me feel more appreciated than like anything else.
I think that's the greatest gift we can give another human, is to just witness them where they were, and not because they chose it, but because they had to, and they did.
Yeah, which is often the only way we really end up having to do something hard is because we have to. It wouldn't be like, yeah.
Lauren, where can people find you online?
So my Instagram is at where bluebirds fly with an underscore at the end.
Okay.
And then my website is poptop.land. And I'm also on LinkedIn, just Lauren Sweeney. I went to Fordham. Those are the easiest places to find me.
Awesome. We'll include all of that in the show notes. Lauren, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being you and for sharing yourself with all of us.
Thank you, Cass. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm grateful we got to have it.